Welcome to High Floor Fantasy. I'm Chad, and these are my top 10 running backs headed into Week 8. Let's go ahead and get it started. Number 1, Derrick Henry from Tennessee. He's the number 1 overall running back in fantasy. I have him at number 1 as well. Interesting stat from his last game. It was his first career touchdown pass against Kansas City. He found that connection with Michael Pruitt. Neato. He's facing an Indianapolis defense that's allowing less than 14 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. It's not the best matchup. He's got his work cut out for him if he wants to keep his average up above 20 where it is right now. Derrick Henry, number 1 overall for everybody else and for me. Number 2, DeAndre Swift from Detroit. The Lions' offense is disappointing, but Swift keeps producing week after week, and I didn't see it coming in the preseason. I missed on him. He's the number 1 offensive weapon for Detroit for sure. He's facing a Philadelphia defense that's allowing over 22 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, so he's in a plus matchup for Week 8. DeAndre Swift at number 2. Number 3, Jonathan Taylor, Indianapolis. The good thing is he has pushed Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack out of relevance as running backs on that team. He's also had 2 consecutive 100-plus yard games. He's facing Tennessee in Week 8, and they're allowing less than 16 fantasy points per game. It's not the best matchup, but he is seeing more volume and production as the weeks go by to edge those other 2 guys out. I got Jonathan Taylor at number 3. Number 4, Leonard Fournette from Tampa. Now, I know I have him a little higher than most, but I have some methodology to my rankings, and it's one guy's opinion about one player for 1 week, right? It could change, and you may have a different opinion about him. But this is where I have him at number 4. He is inconsistent, unfortunately, and I will talk more about that inconsistency for the running backs when we get to number 10. You'll be surprised at that one, too. He has a low floor, less than 7 fantasy points, and he's got a high ceiling of over 30. So that's going to ding your consistency, that kind of range. But over the last 5 games, he has reined that inconsistency in a little bit. He's got a middle-of-the-road matchup this week. He's facing New Orleans, and they're allowing less than 15 fantasy points per game. He's an RB2, and so I do super flex. I'm not going to put him as anybody's number 1, but I have him at number 4 headed into Week 8. Number 5, Austin Ekeler, Los Angeles Chargers. They're coming off a bye week. They struggled in their last game a little bit. He kind of got game scripted out, but I don't expect their struggles to continue. They're facing a New Orleans defense headed into Week 8 that allows almost 17 points per game, so he should return to a more normal workload for Week 8. I've got Austin Ekeler, number 5. Number 6, Joe Mixon, Cincinnati. He's had a touchdown in 4 straight games, 3 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdowns. He's been healthy so far. That's always been the big question mark with him. I hope I didn't just jinx everything. He's also facing a very soft New York Jets defense in Week 8. They're allowing, get this, over 27 fantasy points per game to running backs. Good Lord. He's going to continue in his RB1 role. Joe Mixon at number 6. Number 7, Aaron Jones, Green Bay. He could see heavy usage in the game Thursday night. There's no Adams and no Lazard. He is, however, facing the number 2 defense in the NFL. They're allowing less than 14 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. But I guess going into this situation, he's like Princess Leia talking to Obi-Wan in the first Star Wars movie. You're our only hope. I got Aaron Jones at number 7. Number 8, Najee Harris, Pittsburgh. They're coming off a bye week as well. He's had 4 games in a row with over 20 fantasy points, and he's had a touchdown in 4 out of the last 5 games. It's a divisional matchup facing Cleveland's defense. They're allowing less than 15 fantasy points per game. It's not a plus matchup, but this TD streak could make the difference. You don't want anybody to be too touchdown dependent, but that's what could make the difference for him in Week 8. I got Najee Harris at number 8. Number 9, Alvin Kamara, New Orleans. He's coming off a greater than 30 fantasy point performance against Seattle where he had 10 receptions. Now those are some good receiving numbers. That's some really good involvement in the passing game. He's facing, unfortunately, the number 1 defense in Week 8, Tampa Bay. They're allowing less than 11 fantasy points per game. It's not the best matchup, but on the plus side, he is proving to be a dual threat, so he should be good to go for week 8. I got Alvin Kamara, number 9. Finishing things up here, number 10, I have Cordarrelle Patterson from Atlanta. Now, I said I was going to get to this consistency thing earlier. He's the perfect example of the problem with the running back consistency. None of the running backs are consistent. It's why the position is there's such a lack of depth at the position. But unlike, I believe it was Josh Allen yesterday from the quarterback episode, who's inconsistent as well, or any quarterback you could pick for this example, the quarterback is inconsistent because he has 1 or 2 very high ceiling games. The running backs are inconsistent because they have a fairly good average, but then they have 1 or 2 very low floor games. So this is high floor fantasy, right? Inconsistency because of a high ceiling is a better thing than inconsistency because of a low floor. And this is the running backs are it's the low floor that's causing them to be inconsistent. Question marks with Cordarrelle Patterson. Who is going to be the number 1 running back going forward? I say you got to ride the trend. He's facing Carolina this week. It's numbers less than 13 fantasy points per game allowed to opposing running backs. But if we see this continued use in the passing game, I just want to ride this trend with Cordarrelle going into Week 8. I have him at number 10. Okay, that's going to wrap things up. Follow me on the socials, and I'd really appreciate it if you consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Here's what you get. You get an extra podcast or video each week, depending on your level of support. And I upload files that you can download and print out or look at, and I'm working on getting where you can sort them like a spreadsheet type thing. You can sort by floor rating, by consistency, and by matchup. I've made it very affordable. I'd really appreciate you having a look. Stick around for a few more seconds, and you can click through to another one of my videos. I appreciate you. Thank you.